Hi, folks. Chop here. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating story threads in the Bible, beginning with the Nephilim and ending with the flood. And most importantly, we will attempt to discern what bearing this ancient history has on us right now, what it means for us today as we study prophecy and watch for signs that the last days are upon us. I hope you'll stick with me on this episode because this is not the same old prophecy talk you can find on a dozen different channels. I think you'll find it enlightening not only on what happened thousands of years ago, but also on our current situation. I've dug and researched and prayed and read in an attempt to bring you new info you're not seeing elsewhere. Assuming you're not really studied up on this topic, you should pick up a lot of new detail and insight as to what the days of Noah were really like. I also have a cool bonus fact to share at the end that's almost certain to surprise you. Let's do this. We'll work primarily in Genesis 6 and supplement our study with a couple of the most interesting extra-biblical texts out there, the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Enoch, which is not included in any mainstream Bible, is attributed to Enoch, Noah's great-grandfather. The Book of Jubilees, which is also not canon in any mainstream Bible, is attributed to a Pharisee in the 2nd century before Christ. Like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees expands and illuminates a lot of Old Testament stories with much more detail for consideration. As always, the Bible is our touchstone and benchmark, but that does not mean we can't explore and consider other historical documents that don't conflict with the Bible. We should be especially interested in historical sources that mesh with the Bible and offer credible illumination on biblical topics. I believe the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees fit that description on both counts. According to Enoch and Jubilees, 200 watchers, the angelic beings from Genesis 6, were supposed to shepherd humanity according to a divine plan.
The angels of the Lord descended on the earth, those who are named the Watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. Jubilees 4:15.
Contrary to popular belief, the Watchers did not immediately come to Earth and start marrying human women, nor were they drawn to Earth by their lust for human women. For a long time, the Watchers were on Earth and they did their jobs according to their divine assignment. They educated certain humans on approved topics who then passed their knowledge on to others. For example, under their tutelage, Enoch himself became the first human to learn to read and write.
And he was the first among men that are born on earth, who learnt writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of their months in a book, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. Jubilees 4:17.
Enoch's son Methuselah spent 300 years with the Watchers and obviously received an extensive education from them.
And he was moreover with the angels of God these 6 jubilees of years, and they showed him everything which is on earth and in the heavens, the rule of the sun, and he wrote down everything. Jubilees 4:21.
By the way, a jubilee in the Jewish system is 50 years. But things went sideways, because Genesis 6 tells us that the sons of God, the Watchers, eventually took human women as wives.
Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Genesis 6:1 and 2.
This unholy union between angels and humans produced a race of giants, all male, called the Nephilim. While the Bible mentions giants in a number of places, we don't get a lot of detail on their antics. That's where the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees come in. The first part of the Book of Enoch is called the Book of Watchers, and it spans the first 35 chapters. In addition to marrying human women and thereby unleashing a race of monsters on earth, the Watchers, led by Samyaza, taught humans various arts and technologies, things that humanity was not supposed to know yet. Azazel, for example, taught men to make swords and shields, taught women to make themselves up with cosmetics. The impact of these forbidden teachings was profound. It accelerated human development in ways that were not part of the divine plan. Man's sin nature was already well established, and this advanced education at the hands of the Watchers enabled sin to spread like a toxic stain across the earth. In addition to that, the Nephilim ran wild, creating havoc, consuming food at an exponential rate that left many humans starving. Eventually, these mighty men turned on humanity and began feasting on them. Their vast size and strength made them a juggernaut that rolled over humanity with ease. Their Watcher parents either couldn't control them or didn't care to try. Enoch was a godly man who was troubled by the lawlessness and sin, and he began documenting everything that was going on. According to his book, the earth itself cried out over the corruption.
Who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Enoch 7:3-6.
To put it mildly, God was angry. He condemned the Watchers to be locked in an abyss until Judgment Day, and he dispatched the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael to subdue and imprison them. First, however, he had the Watchers observe as their sons, the Nephilim, turned on each other by divine order of God and killed each other until they were wiped out. Then they were locked away, where they're still imprisoned today, waiting for their final judgment. Jude addresses this and also compares the behavior of the Watchers to the sexual immorality for which Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed.
And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, as Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities around them in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Jude verses 6-7.
The now terrified Watchers were so desperate that they begged Enoch to intercede. He did, going to God and begging for mercy for the wayward angels, but God denied that request. Okay, we looked at Genesis 6:1-2, where this supernatural invasion got rolling. Now let's hop down to verse 9, where you may see something you've never noticed before. Hey, a side note, I'll be studying my Bible and read a verse I've read dozens of times, and out of the blue, something huge jumps out at me, something I'd never noticed before, and it's so profound it gives me goosebumps. Let me know in the comments if this ever happens to you. Years back, I had just such an experience as I was reading Genesis 6:9. I'd read the passage countless times, but this time a phrase jumped out at me. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Now, it was easy enough to grasp the idea that Noah was a just man, but perfect in his generations had never caught my eye. This day it did. It seemed an odd phrase, and I started digging into the original Hebrew. The Hebrew word for perfect is kamim, and one of its common meanings is without blemish. The original Hebrew word used for generations was dor, and a common meaning was descent. I instantly grasped the meaning. Noah was without blemish in his descent, in his ancestry. It was completely understandable that God would choose a righteous man and his family to repopulate a soon-to-be empty earth. But why was it important enough to mention that his bloodline was without blemish? Without blemish from what? exactly. Then, like a divine ray of light from above, it all started to make sense moments later as I read verse 11.
The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. Genesis 6:11.
Pay careful attention to that. God didn't say all mankind was corrupt. He said earth was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on earth. A couple verses earlier, in verse 7, God said,
I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Genesis 6:7.
What did corrupt mean here? We know it wasn't just a corruption of the mind and soul, because the corruption God was talking about here had spread to all flesh, including animals, birds, insects, you name it. These creatures didn't have corrupt minds and souls because they didn't have minds and souls at all, as God would speak about in humans. The original Hebrew word used for corrupt was shehet, and its meaning in this context was ruin. Let's assemble all the pieces. We know God decided to send a global flood partially due to sin, but as I read and studied, it became crystal clear that God also decided to send a global flood because mankind, animals, insects, and birds had all been ruined. To me, it's inescapable. The DNA of every man and creature on earth, except aquatic species, the unblemished animals God would personally send to the ark, and one family of 8 people had been ruined. How could that have happened? It seems plain as day that the Watchers and their evil offspring, the Nephilim, had turned Earth into a macabre genetic playground. There was undoubtedly massive experimentation with hybridization, in my opinion. Jubilees also discusses the insane activity that had taken over the earth.
And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way. Alike men and cattle and beasts and birds and everything that walks on the earth, all of them corrupted their ways and their orders, and they began to devour each other, and lawlessness increased on the earth. And every imagination of the thoughts of all men was thus evil continually. Jubilees 5:2.
God chose Noah because he was just, and also because he had an unblemished bloodline. Plainly put, Noah and his family were pure-blood humans, untainted by the wicked DNA manipulation going on that had obviously turned most humans, animals, birds, and insects into genetic messes. God chose Noah and his family to repopulate Earth because he had to have pure bloods. God sent the flood to execute a genetic reboot of the planet. Is this period of time, this environment, where the myths of minotaurs, centaurs, satyrs, and such originated? Or were these myths actually born of reality? Were the days of Noah a real-world nightmare, like the island of Dr. Moreau? Hop into the comments and let me know what you think. Now let's consider 2 key questions raised by this insanity. Number 1, why would the Watchers and Nephilim go so far with genetic mishmashing as to ruin literally all life on Earth? It's simple if you think about it. Satan was trying to cut off the possibility of Jesus being born. After all, the Son of God would certainly have to be an unblemished human in order to be the unblemished Lamb of God, right? Yeah. Satan has been trying since the Garden of Eden to somehow thwart the coming of our Savior and the fulfillment of his mission, and he's not done trying. He will fail, but he still has a few desperate attempts to play out, and these phases will be brutal for believers. Number 2, what exactly did Jesus mean in Matthew 24:37 when he said, "But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be"? He gave examples of how life would be going on as usual, But given all the past times he could have chosen for this comparison, why the days of Noah? Lots of eras had been, life going on as normal. Could it be that wild genetic experimentation will be taking place in the days before and during the tribulation? Could it be going on now? Or could he have been referring simply to the fact that it would be an age rampant with sin? Gosh knows we're living that age right now. Could any of this be related to the satanic UFO deception that we're obviously being prepared and propagandized for? I'd love to see your thoughts on this in the comments. So there's the likely story, in my opinion, according to the Bible, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Jubilees, as to how the earth and virtually everything in it became so corrupted that a global flood was required to effect a reset. We've covered a lot here, so I'll wrap up this episode, and thanks for joining me on this journey through these wild days. What do you think about the Watchers and the Nephilim? Let's discuss it in the comments below. And remember, keep digging into the Word and those non-biblical books referenced in the Bible, always using the Bible as the absolute benchmark of credibility. You never know what truths you might uncover. Now here's the bonus fact I promised. Although the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden has almost universally come to be portrayed as an apple, the Book of Enoch describes the tree of knowledge and the fruit it bears. In 1 Enoch 31:4, the book describes the tree as like a species of the tamarind tree, bearing fruit which resembled grapes, extremely fine. Whether this is an accurate description of the forbidden fruit or not, if you happen to run across it, just walk on by. Until next time, this is Chop, signing off from Prophecy Breakdown. Stay curious, stay in the Word, and keep looking up. Maranatha.